Donatello lived from 1386 to 1466 and was the most influential artist of his time. Originally for a niche in the Orson Micheli, Donatello's St. George from 1415 was called Life Bursting from the Stone. The most interesting part is the predella. Here he not only revived relief sculpture, or rilievo schiacciato, he added the new rules of single-point perspective. Look at the arcade on the right. His invention proved that relief carving would never be the same, and Ghiberti made good use of it on the baptistry doors. St. Mark and St. Peter are also by Donatello. His bronze David from 1430 was his second sculpture of the king. It was the first freestanding, life-size statue since antiquity. He achieves a classical portrait of a boy just coming into adolescence. It could be seen from all around in the courtyard of the Medici Palace. This beautiful boy's eroticism was something of a scandal, especially when Goliath's helmet tickles his posterior with a feather. A leading politician in Florence, Niccolò da Uzzano, died in 1431. This may have been cast from a death mask. The Marzocco is one of his two great pieces made from sandstone. He holds a shield with a symbol of the Giglio, or lily, symbol of Florence. But truth be told, the Giglio of Florence is not a lily, but a stylized iris. In his early 20s, Donatello sculpted his first statue, which became a symbol of Florence. It was meant to be placed on high in front of the Duomo, but was deemed too small. Christ gazes out at us in this variation of the Madonna of Humility. Here is an actual Madonna of Humility, since she sits on the ground. The bronze Tondo was probably cast in Padua, and Verrocchio carved the frame some 20 years later. This terracotta stood in an aedicule until 1986. While the overpainting has faded, we are left with the smiling countenance of the Christ child looking at us. Mary's robe is reminiscent of that of an ancient priestess. These features suggest that it was most likely carved in Padua. This influential relief was housed in a tabernacle by Fra Bartolomeo in the study of Cosimo I. Here the Madonna breaks out of the frame as she senses her child's fate. Michelangelo's first sculpture owes a debt to Donatello. The Madonna's foot marginally breaks through the frame. The angels unveiling the scene with drapery is reminiscent of the Madonna of the Clouds. Here we see some pieces inspired by Donatello and related works. This is the tabernacle by Fra Bartolomeo that housed the Dudley Madonna. Donatello was born in Florence in 1386. He was the son of Niccolò di Bettobardi, who was a wool stretcher, which probably provided a good income. While in Pistoia, Donatello befriended Filippo Brunelleschi, who was some 10 years older and was working on silver figures for an altar in the cathedral. Donatello and Brunelleschi visited Rome together, staying a year to study the artistic and architectural remains left by ancient Rome. Donatello studied briefly with a stonemason and a goldsmith, and then worked as an apprentice in the studio of Lorenzo Ghiberti for the doors of the baptistry. He then went out on his own, carving his marble David in 1412. From then on, commissions poured in, and he accepted more than he could handle. It is said that he had simple tastes and a hot temper. Was Donatello gay? The gay Florentine poet Angelo Poliziano satirizes how Donatello would hire beautiful boys to assist him on projects and stain them so that no one else would find them pleasing. After an assistant stormed out during a quarrel with Donatello, they made up by laughing at each other, which was Florentine slang for sex. Either way, he never married. These two terracottas were sculpted in 1414, probably for a domestic setting. The Madonna's hand drapes over a windowsill as the Bambino grasps her neck, demonstrating his continued interest in foreshortening. The head of this bronze gold-plated reliquary opened to reveal the head of the soldier of Diocletian's army that ensured Florence's victory of the Battle of San Romano, as immortalized by Uccello. Also gold-plated is St. Louis, commissioned by the Guelph Party. Cast in multiple pieces, it is basically a drape set over an armature. The drapery astounded all of Donatello's contemporaries. This rare, full-size terracotta Madonna and Child shows the opposite of the Pazzi Madonna. Here she is all smiles. It may have been set in the Pazzi's private chapel. Donatello used up to 13 coats of paint, allowing the color to survive to this day. Commissioned for the baptismal font in Siena, these two figures were among the first cast bronzes since antiquity. Siena's baptismal font had relief panels by some of the best sculptors of the day. In Donatello's Feast of Herod from 1427, he follows a narrative organized through linear perspective. The vanishing point is between the two figures in the middle, and so do the orthogonals from the windows. Here, perspective is used not just for mathematical precision, but for emotion and drama. The pyramidal structure of this small relief is a wonder of single-point perspective. Is this where Michelangelo thought of using the stairs? This is a polychrome stucco cast from Donatello's marble relief. Standing on a snake is this boy, one of Donatello's most delightful statues. Is it a young Eros? Mercury? In the same vein are the spiritarelli, such as this pair, that lit the organ. This spiritarello may have been inspired by Verrocchio's Boy with the Dolphin. It stood atop a fountain, and the water came out of the fish's mouth. This spiritello was rejected for the font of Siena, where two others still stand. This remained in Donatello's workshop his whole life. This fellow made it onto the font, but was removed sometime after 1577. Who knows why? This unusual tondo has a background with amphorae and cherubs made of wax and sealed with glass. It was gilded and must have glowed in the candlelight. This capital stood atop the pulpit of the Holy Girdle in the Duomo of Prato. Here Donatello used blue glass paste for the window. This relief was part of the pulpit. It was actually a reliquary. It held the Madonna's girdle, which could be viewed from its top. It may also have been a practice run for Donatello's Cantoria. These indifferent figures were originally painted with a massive amount of gilding and presumed to have been made for a wealthy private patron. The first patron saint of Florence is portrayed as an adolescent and is Donatello's most highly polished work. Commissioned by the Martelli family, it stood in their collection until 1913. It was Donatello's last marble sculpture. These doors were one of his last projects before Donatello left for Padua. The leaves alone are shown, but the doors were designed by Donatello. He and his friend and supporter Antonio Minetti quarreled as Donatello proclaimed himself architect of the doors, made from macchino stone, commonly known as pietra serena, which grew in popularity and was beloved by Michelangelo. This crucifix was made for the Basilica del Santo in Padua. Unlike his earlier crucifix, mocked by Brunelleschi, this Jesus is harmonious. His emaciated frame shows his rib cage. The robes of the grieving putti in this relief are left rougher than their skin. Is this the beginning of non finito? This sorrowful relief is thought to have had a great influence on Bellini, who turned to this subject often. Little is known about this relief. It may have belonged to a pope or the Medici. This intimate Calvary prevents Christ from towering over the mourners on the cross. In shallow relief, the soldier on the right peeks out at us. You can make out an angel behind the bows attempting to stop the arrows in this plaquette. These are the left parts of an unfinished triptych with a single point perspective. The lost right side may have been a lamentation. The Miracle of the Mule in Padua from 1450 shows the mule of a skeptic kneeling before the host. The skeptic said he would not believe in the host unless his mule knelt before it as offered up by Saint Anthony. This lamentation is an open framework with no background. The rough features may also point to the beginning of non finito. This St. John was transferred from Florence to Siena, where Donatello intended to end his days. While Donatello went back to Florence, the Baptist stayed in Siena's Duomo. This bronze tondo was given by Donatello to his doctor. It is also a mold into which on the reverse side could be poured molten glass. This stunning relief in bronze, silver, and gilded copper was in the Medici Palace during Vasari's lifetime, but was likely commissioned by someone else. Here the Roman soldiers are transfixed, with one even biting his fingernails. The interplay of silver and gold is stunning in one of the master's last works. In 1452, the King of Naples commissioned a replica of the equestrian statue Gattamelata in Padua. 4 years later, work had begun, but Donatello left for Siena and never returned to this work. The head wound up in the Medici collection and was given to King Carafa of Naples by Lorenzo. Similarly to the Carafa head, this head with bulging veins was also left unfinished. It is thought to be a prophet because his eyes are cast upwards. While the Museo dell'Opera del Duomo was not officially part of this exhibition, I include works by Donatello here. In 1422, Donatello was commissioned to create 4 prophets for the niches in Giotto's campanile. Especially successful when seen at that height is the Abraham and Isaac. The final 2 sculptures, Habakkuk and Jeremiah, were seen as Donatello's crowning achievement thus far. His Jeremiah, from 1435, has a large head, which would have seemed normal from below. His cantoria, or singing gallery, competed directly with Della Robbia's. They were finished by 1438 for the Duomo. I wonder how many works were inspired by this small terracotta relief. As seen from below, St. John's legs would have appeared normal. St. Mary Magdalene was carved from wood right after Donatello returned to Florence from Padua in 1453. This aging, repentant Magdalene offers up an emotion unseen by any other Magdalene in art. After the flood of 1966, it was restored, and when the paint was scraped away, gilding was discovered in her hair. His 2 pulpits for San Lorenzo were the last things Donatello worked on. His early Scicciato has now been stretched to its limit. The continuous narratives evoking tremendous spiritual depth and complexity practically spill out of the frame. His one and only Annunciation has its roots in antique art and was made from pietra serena, or serene stone. This crucifix for Santa Croce was criticized by Brunelleschi, saying he depicted a contadino, or farmer. Originally a fountain, Judith and Holofernes from 1456 can be found in the Palazzo Vecchio. It was taken from the Medici Palace after their expulsion and ironically placed in public as a warning against tyrants. This multimedia piece was made on a wooden base engraved with fillings in polychrome stucco with a mosaic background with silver-plated leather tesserae and covered with glass. The commission for the first life-size equestrian bronze statue since antiquity drew him to Padua. Gattamelata took him 7 years, was finished in 1450, and stands outside the Basilica of San Antonio. So the next time you marvel at a Michelangelo or Bernini, remember whose shoulders they stood upon.